Hi, my name is Ava, and today I'm here with Mary, Morgan, and Tyler. Today, our general podcast topic is regarding the philosophy of science. And for this module, we watched the video titled Intro to History of Science and read the article from Friend titled Zebras, Bacteria, and Asteroids. We evaluated both of these sources, we took notes on them, and we also took a quiz to see how well we understood the information. The video we watched was from Crash Course. It discussed how we humans have all wanted to explore questions and answers that we've sought to wonder about, specifically big, ambiguous questions. Examples of these questions included in the video are, what is stuff and where are we? Scientists from all over the world have been investigating these questions. And then on the other hand, the article from Toby Friend was a little bit more difficult to understand, as mentioned by our class, but it focused on what's real and if whatever is real can be a part of a unified science. Several components such as scientific realism, metaphysical unity, compositional eliminativism, and more were mentioned. So to start off, Mary will start with the history of the philosophy of science and then continue with the influential figures who had an effect on this concept. Morgan will then expand on the reading and provide a more detailed summary to help us understand. And then finally, Tyler will talk about the independent and outside research that he did on transcendence with some specific examples to help us gain a better understanding of the overall podcast topic.
Okay, so as Ava said, I'm going to be talking about the history and some influential figures that go into the philosophy of science specifically. So the philosophy of science became a specialized academic discipline in the mid-20th century, but philosophers as early as Plato and Aristotle developed views about science that we use today. Philosophy of science addresses the nature of science, including its methods, goals, and institutions. So one of the main influential figures in the philosophy of science was George Berkeley, and through a critique of scholasticism, what is now recognized as the beginning of when modern science emerged, which was 1550 to 1750, around the times. So some of these scientists or philosophers that were kind of in that time were Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, Descartes, Boyle, Torricelli, and Newton. And Berkeley had a broad understanding of science of his day, including what we now call the psychology of visual perception, medicine, biology, chemistry, and physics. And his project was to kind of critique mistaken philosophical interpretations of some theories, especially those that led to skepticism and atheism. His philosophical system is largely a reaction to the materialistic mechanism that was used by a lot of scientists and philosophers like Descartes and Locke. And Berkeley's critique rejects the provision of the theory of an ordinary object, so an apple or a chair is a material substance. So it's an unthinking, something that exists independently of our minds. Berkeley's ontology only includes spirits or minds and ideas, and our senses are to be trusted, and all physical knowledge comes by way of experience. And then there was another more recent influential figure in philosophy of science, who was Karl Popper, and he was one of the most influential philosophers of science of the 20th century. He made significant contributions to debates concerning general scientific methodology and theory choice, the demarcation of science from non-science, the nature of probability and quantum mechanics, and the methodology of social sciences. So Popper doesn't hold on to the fact that non-scientific claims are meaningless, but instead he argues that such unfalsifiable claims can often serve important roles in both scientific and philosophical contexts, even if we are incapable of really finding out what their truth or falsity is. And while Popper is a realist who holds that scientific theories aim at the truth, he doesn't think that empirical evidence can ever provide us grounds for believing that a theory is either true or likely to be true. So in this sense, Popper is a fallibist who holds that while the unfalsified theory we have adopted might be true, we'll never know. So that kind of ties into a lot of the stuff that Morgan's going to talk about, realism and stuff like that.
Sure, yeah. So we read two different articles for this section. So it was zebras, bacteria, and asteroids. That was one that kind of delved more into like the philosophy of science as a whole, and that was a little more of a complex read. So I'm going to be talking about the one about transcendence and neuroscience with Richie, and I personally really enjoyed this article. I thought it was fantastic. But it explored the relationship between transcendence and religious experience and then scientific explanations that may exist for them. So that kind of ties, what can we experience in our minds and how we feel with things, but can this even be explained? Is there an explanation? Does there need to be an explanation for it? Kind of going back to that. So Richie kind of started out with explaining how she had this experience when she went for a walk. She took a break from work and she's in this like forest hiking, and she just had this like insane feeling, and it felt that it was something she couldn't really explain, but it was something that was occurring there, and it kind of can be not explained, but she kind of goes into later in the article how parts of our brain interact differently with different types of religious practices or like spiritual experiences. So maybe that could be described more as a spiritual experience, and this and like going to church as a religious practice might make your brain feel differently than going on a walk in nature. But it also kind of went into how some beliefs can be undermined and how science can like undermine things, but it also can qualify things as well, which kind of ties into the scientific like revolution as a whole, because a lot of that was conflict between what people thought in religion. I mean, religion was really big then. I can't say it's not big now, but I feel like people definitely might have a little more of a scientific view on things. And could that be related to science? Is science not real if religion isn't real? That kind of thing. Can they work together? And while like science can't explain the specific belief, so it can't explain why you're Catholic versus Lutheran, it can explain by how practicing those beliefs makes you feel. So that was really what Richie discussed there, and if those feelings like exist from practicing those things, then can they be explained? And it kind of goes into that whole thing, and it opens up a lot of like possibilities for like spiritual component in one's life if they don't really believe in religion, because the scientific explanations are like a reflection on like lack of imagination, not like lack of truth. So it's more about, like I said, how the brain works. Your brain is affected differently when you have a religious experience, and so it opens up spiritual components to someone's life, but it corresponds overall to the philosophy of science, because there's science in religious experiences, and science is just the concept of belief, which is really what this boils down to there. So you can boil it down to the concept of belief and how someone has beliefs in different things. There's a right belief. Science doesn't qualify being Catholic versus being Jewish, right? It qualifies how your brain feels from that belief, so that's a good thing there, and it kind of qualifies not even qualifies, that affirms what some people have, or can kind of open their mind to exploring some more beliefs there. So it's relevant to people today, because I feel like a lot of people, and I'm sure you all can agree, we can discuss this later, but individuals have eliminated their religious or spiritual beliefs because they feel like they can't be explained by science, and they want to explain everything away. And Richie goes into explaining that neurotheology is something that explains why we have these religious beliefs as a whole, which is super fascinating. But it goes into how neurotheology, which is the topic of the majority of the article, is how our brain interacts with religious thoughts, beliefs, feelings. So,
Alright, so I'm going to go and talk a little bit about transcendence. So the research I did is more away from the religious side, but I'll still use Richie's definition of what she called transcendence. So in the beginning of her article, Richie called transcendence a holistic embodied state that could be considered a mild form of religious experience. And to go a little bit more into transcendence as a whole, I'm going to talk about Jean-Paul Sartre, who wrote The Transcendence of Ego. And in this, he says that there are two different types of transcendence. Those two types of transcendence being transcendence of being and transcendence of consciousness. And within the transcendence of consciousness, there are two different types, called in itself and for itself. In itself is described as the object of consciousness that is independent and non-relational, and for itself is defined as in relation to something else, and it is not possible to grasp it within a conscious experience. So, in itself, being as the object of consciousness that's independent is kind of just something that you can only see, you can't really feel it or touch it, but you can only see that inside of your consciousness. And it's a little bit similar to for itself, except that being in your consciousness, you can also be able to feel it, but you cannot be able to fully grasp what it is in your consciousness. So it's something that would be, you could be able to see in the real world, but you can't fully grasp it inside of your mind. Both, from what I found from the research, talking about the two different types of transcendence and Ritchie's definition of transcendence, both are different from what we see every day, and they're both on a separate plane from what we experience in everyday life. There's something that's inside our minds.
Alright, so I wrote down a couple questions, like always, but as I was like going off of like what Morgan said, I kind of like wrote up a question. I think it's a good starter one. Like, you were talking about how individuals have eliminated religious beliefs because of science. So I wanted to like kind of go into that. Like, I'm a Catholic, so it's kind of like, and I don't even connect science to it myself. Like, I've never even thought about it in this way. Like, I just think about it in like the strict way. So I just kind of want to see like what's your guys' like opinions on like that type of thing, because I don't really know much about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also Catholic. I practice in Catholic. This doesn't apply to me as much. It wasn't like a personal experience kind of thing, but I went to Catholic high school. People that went to Catholic high school were like atheists, and they were open about it because you had, I mean, it's a high school to high school, right? But you talk about it in religion, and like, well, this can't be explained by science. How do we explain this? And that was always the go-to, let me circle back to this response. And I'm like, well, am I a realist? Yes, I think science is incredibly important. I'm not going to debate that matter, but it's more of a matter of like, does everything need to be explained to that level if it's benefiting you in a positive way, right? Transcendent experiences, having those good experiences where it makes your brain feel good, or you feel like there's something beyond yourself. Does that need to be explained, or can you just enjoy it? Sometimes we don't need to go as sciencey into things that might not need the science. Now, when it comes to vaccines and cure for cancer, yes, scientific realist, right, 100%. But I think I've heard people say like they've eliminated that because it can't be explained, and I'm like, well, not everything is meant to.
Right.
You've seen the Polar Express, not everything's meant to be explained. So I don't know. I don't know what you guys think.
All right, I agree with the not everything is meant to be or can be explained by science. I'm not the most religious, and I never really practiced anything, but I definitely think that even like any religious beliefs that I do have definitely have not been eliminated by science. Just because I feel like if there was something, I feel like science really couldn't or wouldn't be able to explain what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am religious, I'm a Christian, and I also think like science is real. I agree with both of what all of you guys said, that like science explains a lot of things, and then I also think there are some exceptions that science just can't explain. And so I don't know if I think it's the best thing to eliminate religious beliefs or just any beliefs because I don't think science can prove every single thing, and like what you said, like it's probably not meant to. But I definitely think you can still hold both to a high value. I don't think you have to be like, oh, it's religion or science. You can only be on one. I've never felt the urge to eliminate one or the other.
Right. I definitely agree with like what everyone's saying, and like I think that Morgan's point, going off of that, I think there's a fine line of where like trying to figure stuff out like to a certain point, especially when it comes to like science. Like science is like constantly changing, and we always talked about it, and I think like we'll never find out true things because things are always coming. So when it comes to religious, like I think there's a fine line that we have to draw where like we have to separate the two. And I feel like with the philosophy of stuff, like how everyone's trying to tie that in, I think there needs to be like, yes, like people can figure it out and try and figure it out, but like when it comes to people that actually believe in certain things, like religion, like that's their belief and how they do it, and like people trying to figure out, like there's no connection between them, or there is, like they don't believe in anything, they might not believe in anything themselves, but like religious wise, and I think those are the people that are assuming like, oh, people are leaving their religious beliefs for science, and I think those are the ones that are trying to figure out the connection between the two. So someone like me who like, I'm not trying to figure out how these beliefs are like trying to be proven true, so I don't really like do that. Like I haven't left my religion because of science, but I think the people that are trying to figure it out are the ones that are leaving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's 100% the people that are trying to take that from it. And just kind of to wrap it up here, I feel like some things in religion, like I don't know if you guys went to Catholic high school, but like you have like Bible class or whatever, and like the Bible obviously was written very like there's errors in the Bible, right? It's a storytelling mechanism. So if you hold it to full truth there and don't take into account that there might be error, then you're not gaining everything from it. But if you just look at it and you're like, this story might not be true. Maybe Jesus didn't make someone unblind, but I can learn something from this and take something positive away from it, and I don't need to explain this phenomenon by science. I think that's a positive thing.
Right. No, I went to a Catholic high school too, and there was a lot of those, like you have to go to those classes, and like you said, there was people in Catholic high schools that don't go, that aren't Catholic.
Yeah.
Which is kind of just like, that's fine, but like, they also don't, like, they don't really tie the two together either. I think it's like what's your point about like how, you were saying like Catholic schools, like Bible school, like, the Bible, like, we don't like take that, well, at me as a Catholic, I don't know about every Catholic, but I don't take it, I haven't read the whole Bible, I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't, and I think that's like people that don't believe in certain religions, like sciencey people, sometimes they think that like Catholic people take like the Bible and believe everything in it, and like that's what they follow, but like everyone's different, everyone determines things differently, and like I feel like that's what we have to look at when we're talking about things like science and religion tying together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, going off of that, my high school was not Catholic, it was just a big public high school, but like I'm in theology right now, it's obviously a lot of Bible reading, and like a lot of it, we go in depth and like try to explain it, and like we were taught that, or we find out that a lot of it is like, some stories are specifically like ironic and some things a metaphor, it's not like every single thing is literal. Like we talked about when was it Jonah and the fish, like getting swallowed by the big fish?
Yeah.
Yeah, like how that could actually be a metaphor.
Yeah.
So like there's certain things like that I'm like, well, if you look at it at a literal standpoint, it won't make sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some things that like maybe religion and science can go hand in hand, like some things from the Bible, like people have like discovered or found proof for. So I'm like, I don't think that there has to be like I said earlier, like it's one or the other.
Right.
I think they can work together.
Yeah.
At the end of the
I think
day.
they
I think they
can.
should.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of finishing it off, 'cause
Yeah.
we're almost at time here, but just quickly, are we like realist, anti-realist? Like what's our view on science?
I'm definitely a realist. I think that if we find something, we have to like you should define it. You should like try and go for it. But like at the same time, I do separate my like two sides, like my religious side
Sure.
and realist side. Because if you get too realist about religion, then that's where things start to kind of get confusing. So, but I definitely think if we're just talking science, I'm a realist. I'm kind of in between, I guess,
Yeah.
in a way.
I agree with you 100%. I feel like it's a spectrum more, and I don't think you need to be one or the other, especially when it comes to matters of like belief in something that has like a really positive effect on you, and then science, which also can have a really positive effect on you if you believe in both, right? But I think they definitely intersect. I'm a realist when it comes to science. I fully believe in it. You don't have to convince me there. But when it comes to like, I think sometimes I would kind of drive myself crazy if I tried to make religion realist, or I tried to make like, say I meditate, or I go for a nature walk and I leave my phone in my room. If I try to explain how good that makes me feel, I think that might take away from me feeling good kind of thing. Like I don't think it's meant to be explained, and I know it's the philosophy class and we're trying to explain everything here, but like I think it's a spectrum more, and I fall somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I definitely don't think it's just one side or the other. I definitely agree to spectrum. I would say myself would be more of a realist, but I definitely don't think I'm fully a realist. Like, I definitely believe that science is a good thing, and that science is definitely something that should be, like, everybody should know, like, basic science. They should know, like, how everything works, especially since science is such a big part of our lives. And so I definitely think that I'm a realist, but it really just, I can't be just one side or the other.
Yeah, I like all of your guys' points. I thought that you said something good with the spectrum, and like in class when you asked, or if you don't care, I think there's some things I'm just like, I don't care, like what you said, look into it. But then on other things, I am a realist. So yeah, I like that you said it was a spectrum. Yep.
All right. Well, thanks.